Celebrities get a lot of pull in this world. It's why people like LeBron James have been signed to a $100 million lifetime contract with Nike, and it's why people like Kim Kardashian get given their own apps, because they have sway over public opinion and what they like the people like. The majority of athletes would never set foot in a McDonald's. It messes up every part of their valuable ecosystem, but they constantly get given millions upon millions of dollars to appear in their commercials in the United States. The same goes for video games. Having someone's name attached to your game can increase the sales that you're likely to get, and thus giving them the big bucks makes a lot of sense. Today I'm Sam from R-CADE Glasgow, and we're having a look at the top 5 celebrity video games. Number 5, Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City. I mentioned athletes endorsed by McDonald's brand earlier, and so we're starting off with one of their biggest names of the 90s, Chicago Bulls star shooting guard Michael Jordan. Jordan himself is known for many things: the dedication he brought to the court, his impact on the footwear industry, his crime-fighting exploits, and that incredible Last Dance documentary series that brought us the "and I took that personally" meme. The crime fighting, you want to know more? Well, that's what the game's about. Jordan took to the streets in 1994 Chicago, trying to track down and save the other members of his Scottie Pippen celebrity basketball dream team. Produced by EA, Jordan could make use of a variety of special basketballs to achieve his goals. This includes the bomb ball, which conjures up images of the 1966 Adam West Batman film, or a freeze ball, which conjures up images of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. Make use of Michael Jordan's standard advertiser-approved supplements, including Wheaties and Gatorade, as you fast break through 24 levels of fun, starting with a hidden prison in the basement of a museum hidden underneath the ancient Egyptian exhibit. Better bet your bulls a gameplay is coming to the R-CADE Glasgow Patreon soon. Number 4, 50 Cent's Bulletproof. Released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, 50 Cent Bulletproof was a product of Genuine Games and Vivendi Universal. The game is notably remembered not only by fans of the rapper and the genuinely weird catalogue of PlayStation 2 games that exists, but also for winning an award for Best Original Song at the 2005 Spike TV Game Awards. God bless Spike TV and their weird decision making. The game follows Curtis Jackson, also known as 50 Cent, as he attempts to track down those that tried to have him assassinated when he took 9 gunshots to the chest. Unsurprisingly, the game received an 18+ rating. Maybe it had something to do with going to war against the Chinese drug kingpin, or the fact that the game synopsis has every second line saying, "and then 50 Cent killed him." Within the game, various members of 50 Cent's musical lineage are present as characters. Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo and Young Buck make up 50's squad, while Dr. Dre is an arms dealer and Eminem is a corrupt police officer. Number 3, Shaq Fu. Okay, this is not a good game. The remake is at least playable, but even within the first 5 minutes there's some problematic writing choices. Shaq gets called burnt rice by the stereotype of the Chinese man within the tutorial. But the original is a legend when it comes to celebrity licensed video games. Okay, I'll tell you what, let me explain the plot to you and you tell me in the comments if this makes more sense as an EA game or a low budget produced movie similar to Kazam or Steel. Shaq accidentally walks into a dojo in Tokyo on his way to a charity basketball game. There he meets Liotsu, who transports Shaquille O'Neal to another dimension, with the challenge to rescue an abducted child called Nezu. Who stole Nezu? Why, an evil mummy called Set Ra, of course. The game has been largely panned retroactively, oftentimes making its way to one of the top 10 worst games of all time, at the very least one of the worst games of the 90s. Consider it because of the uncomfortable photorealistic animation style, which itself was poorly animated, difficult controls, or this very weird story. There are a lot of reasons to point the finger at Shaq Fu as one of the worst games of all time. Of course, I do now own it on the Mega Drive, so sorry not sorry. As I say, it's got Shaq on it. Why else would I buy it? Number 2, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Moonwalker, the game of the movie of the life of the international superstar pop sensation that was Michael Jackson, is perfect in almost every way to me as a game to sit around and play with your friends. In hindsight, a somewhat unsettling premise for a game, Jackson's task is to save kidnapped children from the evil Mr. Big. The game originally released for the PC in 1989, a year after the movie itself came out, with the Sega-produced Mega Drive and stand-up arcade versions being released a year later. For the Mega Drive version of the game, MJ, different from the entry number 5, climbs up and down ladders, opening various doors as he tries to track down all of the missing children. Behind certain doors are enemies he must defeat, and behind others are items that he can use, but the level doesn't finish until he finds all of the captured kids. How does Jackson dispose of his enemies? Why, with sick dance moves, of course. By far the most entertaining version of the game, in my humble opinion, is the sit-down arcade version. Control MJ through a beat-em-up world as you take on gangster after gangster, defeating them with sick dance moves until you have found and saved all of the missing kids. Also added to the game was a super dance attack, in which everyone on screen pauses as Jackson dances to a chiptune version of one of his most popular songs. There are 3 different songs that play when he does this, and all of them are great. Using these super dance attacks does damage to every enemy visible on the screen at that time. Sometimes it's enough to knock them out, sometimes it's just what you need to get rid of that final boss. The arcade game also had the capabilities of 3-person play, with each player taking on a Jackson in a different suit, one in red, one in white, and one in black. Tell me below what you think each of these different Michael Jacksons represents. The absolute best part of the arcade version of Moonwalker has to be Bubbles the monkey though. I know what you're thinking, do I mean Bubbles the monkey, Michael Jackson's pet chimpanzee he had until the day he died? I absolutely do. Is he a part of a loading screen? Is he a playable character? Is he secretly revealed to be the identity of Mr. Big? No! But if you can find Bubbles the monkey throughout the various levels of the game, he gives Michael Jackson a big hug and he turns into Cyborg Michael Jackson, who can't just use dance moves, but robot abilities, which can only stand for one thing. Number 1. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Many like me will have grown up with this just being referred to as Punch-Out, but for 3 years in the early 90s it was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And originally, the way I remember it was the plan. The Punch-Out series had already existed since 1983, when the eventual game that would become known as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was released in 1987. While Nintendo were preparing for the distribution of the NES port of their game Punch-Out Gold, the president of Nintendo America, Minoru Arakawa, saw a Mike Tyson match that inspired him to sign a licensing agreement with the young boxer. Tyson at this point in his career was yet to win a World Heavyweight Championship, and aligning themselves with the unproven star could have been a major sacrifice for the company. Tyson was reportedly signed to a $50,000 licensing deal which spanned for 3 years. After those 3 years, his name was to be removed from any mention of the game and any subsequent releases. Luckily for Nintendo, not long after he put pen to paper, he would win his first ever heavyweight boxing title. This was lucky for Nintendo because the game sold 2 million units on initial release. For future re-releases of the game in which Tyson couldn't appear by name, the character based on his likeness was instead referred to as Mr. Dream. Within the game, players control Little Mac, a character named after the sprite's small stature. Due to the reduction in computing capacity between arcade machines and at-home video game consoles, Genyo Takeda and his team instead chose to change how the user-controlled character was displayed. In the arcade games, it was a semi-transparent version which allowed you to get a first-person view while still being able to make contact with your opponent, whereas at home it was changed so that Lil Mac was small enough that you could still see all of your opponents over his head. The opponent AI was also changed between the arcade and at-home release. In the arcade game, the opponents would have a variety of randomised fighting styles and combinations, which meant that it was harder to continue playing, resulting in players having to spend more and more money to keep themselves in contention. For the NES port of the game, the opposing characters were all given a structured pattern of movements that the player would be able to work out if they spent enough time challenging them. Trial and error was the best way to complete this challenge, prompting Games Radar in 2012 to define it as a great puzzle game disguised as a sports game. Punch-Out Golden didn't need the Mike Tyson tie-in to be a great game, but it did need the celebrity endorsement to become so fondly remembered. Without Mike Tyson's name on the cover, it very likely doesn't sell 2 million units at a release, doesn't get re-released in future generations because people have such fond memories of it. Regularly ranked in the top 10 NES games of all time, and even by some as a top 20 Nintendo produced game of all time, I believe Game Informer put it best in a 2001 review where they referred to it as beloved. Now, nobody tell Jordan that Jackson and Tyson got the top 2 spots. I think he might have a problem with it. I've been Sam from R-CADE Glasgow. If you want to see all your favourite R-CADE Glasgow celebrities, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at R-CADE Glasgow. And if you want to interact with the whole R-CADE Glasgow community, make sure you join our private Discord server. If you love these top 5s, love the work that we do, love the shop that we run, and want access to even more great video content like exclusive gameplays, make sure you support us at patreon.com/R-CADE Glasgow. I've been Sam from R-CADE Glasgow. Have a great day.